ake ana te atakura, he tia, he hoka, he hauhu, te ike Māori.
Kia ora, thank you. So, look, the first item of business is actually an acknowledgement, and I am just going to go to and invite former Councillor Kay Simmons to please come and join me up here actually, rather than sit there as well. We haven't had the opportunity to acknowledge Councillor Kay Simmons, Victoria. Sorry, no, it's funny not saying not saying that anymore. But Victoria had 5 terms as 4. Oh, sorry, only 4. 4 terms as councillor previously. And obviously, due to circumstances, wasn't able to give a message in terms of when she was able to leave. And it was important that we acknowledged her contribution and service to this district over those 12 years. And she has seen some massive changes in that 12 years, probably more than most. But in those 12 years, she has contributed hugely to the well-being of this district, not only chairing the Wellbeing Committee, but Older Persons Network and other things that she has done. And her contact with a lot of those organisations and groups within this district has been massive. And I can just off the top of my head think of Keep New Zealand Beautiful, Te Whare Mahana, the Budget Service, Thompson House, family violence. Also, though, her organisation of things like Waitangi Day celebrations and things like that has been absolutely massive. I hope you've got a life back in some respects, Victoria. But on behalf of the district, can I acknowledge you first of all with this a little memento, as you know, came from the stained glass windows here. So first of all that, and then as well as some flowers.
Thank you. Should have bought a trolley.
You should have bought a trolley, because as you know, oops, you don't need my tie in there. The kowhai tree as well.
Beautiful.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
That's lovely, thank you very much.
No worries. Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah. Ironically, I have to be at a meeting at 1:30. So thank you very much for this acknowledgement. It was actually unexpected, to be honest, so it's lovely that I've been asked here today. I have got my life back. I'm reading a lot of books, getting into my garden that looks like a huge bomb site, and looking forward to my first grandchild in 2 weeks. So, yeah, so lots of life changes, and I wish you all the very best for your upcoming meeting and the rest of your term. You will see me. I'm already messaging a few of you. I'm not going to apologise for that. And likewise for some of the incredible staff sitting here today. Had a great relationship with you all, and yeah, thank you very, very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into the formal part of the meeting. It seems we started a while ago now. We're into it. So we have no apologies today. We do have a number of public participation, and the first one I'm going to invite is Mr. Bruce Little, please. Bruce, just come to the table here. Yep. The button on the right of that little thing in front of you is where you speak to him. Please bring it close to you so that, and remind councillors, please, there is some difficulties hearing, and we want to make sure that those watching or listening online can hear us properly. Welcome, Bruce. turn your button on though. That's it.
Working now?
Yes.
Yeah. Mayor Wandon, CEO, Monique, council officers and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I speak here about the London plane trees, and you all know from the history of them that they were planted about 130 years ago, 40 years ago, and they commemorate when Queen Victoria achieving 50 years on the throne. And for 120 years they were quite successful. They were pollarded every year, allowed to grow to a certain height. Didn't cause much damage to footpaths or anything, and the damage from the litter from the trees was not very much. But about 20 years ago they were allowed to grow much bigger. And that's what this resulted in is a lot more leaf litter, a lot more dropping of seeds and things like this on the buildings and the verandas of the buildings, on the streets, footpaths. The roots have expanded to enormous proportions, and they're now pushing up the asphalt verges. The concrete curbings are fracturing and being pushed up, and also the footpaths are cracking and the cracks go into the buildings, and roots now come out under the back of buildings about 25 metres from where the tree's growing. So they're now starting to cause some serious damage. I'm just going to pass around some photographs. Just pass that around, thanks. Just showing you that how the leaf litter has increased. It's showing the housekeeping we do to keep this under control, sometimes with teams of people. Between November and between the end of July, we're up on the roofs and the verandas at least 25 times now, but that doesn't include the times that we actually are sweeping our entrances to our properties, etc., etc. So it's a housekeeping thing just about every day. Now, as the leaves drop and get moved along by the rainwater, if it's raining, into the gutters and into the drains, I've got a photograph here showing you the drain at the back of the back lane by the SPCA, which caused flooding through the SPCA on the 14th of June this year. At the bottom two photographs, it was completely blocked then, and it's still completely blocked now, so it hasn't been attended to for 6 months. And of course, once things start to flood buildings, this is the effect. It tends to make you close your businesses. You get people in to sweep the water out of the properties. You use wet vacuum cleaners. You use dehumidifiers. I know a shop just down from me had 14 of these going for a week to try and dry his place out. And all caused by, in this photograph, the stormwater drains in the back of my property work extremely well until the leaves get blown over. The leaves get blown over the roofs, and they get carried by the water, and they suck onto the top of the drains, and within seconds the drains block. So you can clean them out at 5 at night, have flooding in your building at 4 in the morning. So this gives you an idea of some of the flooding. See what happens there. So that's what we. And of course, when you flood it out, you have to close your business. You lose turnover. You pay your staff, etc. So the costs are quite horrific. Anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000, and $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000 for some shop owners. If they have carpets damaged, which Harvey Bowler have had on a number of occasions, and he's taken huge measures to try and stop this problem by putting in extra pipes out of the top of rain heads and all this, but they still block them up. And you can clean them at night at 5 and come back at 7 and his premises are flooded. But you see, as the roots grow, they're pushing up the curbs, and you can see by these photographs that they're pushing the curbs up at an alarming rate in the last couple of years. And what this has the effect of doing is putting up a bit of a dam to the rainwater that's trying to run down the gutters, and so now we get lakes virtually out the side of our buildings when it rains. This happened on the 20th of this month, 20th of November, and you'll see that some of the cars have actually parked about 2.5 metres from the curb to try and avoid the 6 or 7 inches thick of water, but the back of the car is almost in the driving lane where the traffic goes through, so it's causing quite a lot of potential damage there. I'm concerned that if this carries on like it is, then the budget the council will have to spend on remedying the problem will be huge. It's even big now. To fix the problem, whether you keep the trees or not, what has to be done is the footpaths ripped up, concrete curbing ripped up, the asphalt work ripped up around the verges from trees, the roots pruned back from under the buildings right back to the tree on that side, huge steel plates if you're going to keep the trees cemented into the ground, and then all the footpaths, curbings and verges reformed and repaved and reconcreted. I don't know what the figure would be, but it would be, I'd say, over $500,000. It could be over $1 million to do both sides of the street. The arborist report that you just saw recently really just backs up what I've been saying. 72 trees were examined, numbered, examined in many ways, the damage they were causing, curbings, footpaths, etc. And 70 out of the 72 were causing damage. So there is a serious problem here. I think council needs to act on this urgently. I don't know whether you've budgeted for it or not, but the costs are getting, by the day, are getting greater. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Bruce. So, do you want questions? It can't be done of officers? Not really, no. They want to ask questions, Bruce. Would you like to come back, Bruce? They want to ask some questions. Yeah. Okay. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Allen, what's that change?
Sorry, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. You've had a chance to read the report, and there are the five options identified there, noting that at this stage it's not about making a decision what to do immediately, it's about what is the process to follow to make the decision. Question is, do you have a preference from among those five options as to which would be the best and fairest way to move forward?
I've looked at the thanks, Dave. I've looked at the options and the consents that some of them go through. I think the situation has got beyond that. The trespassing of the roots under buildings, the damage they're causing, potential damage to foundations, etc., plus the costs incurred by owners, which have to be claimed at some stage, has got to the point where it's virtually moved into the realm of coming under the Property Law Act, which overrides the Resource Consent Act, and if it's damaging property, or property damage or well-being, then it's something that overrides all that, the notable status and everything, and can be used to come to a decision at a much faster rate and much cheaper way than what's been proposed in those options.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce, for the presentation. I guess I just wanted to pick up on a couple of comments you made, which was about, at the moment, you've referenced yourself, but other business owners having suffered damage, particularly from flooding. And so at the moment, as I understand it, you've absorbed those costs. You haven't claimed those from council. Can you comment on potential insurability, or are you facing any challenges as a property owner in terms of your ability to insure, or have you made claims and therefore there is a risk of that being a problem in future?
Look, you're quite right, Sam. The problems are great. I haven't actually mentioned it to my insurance company yet. But the problem is it's an ongoing problem. It's not an instant problem or an immediate problem like a flood or something like that, which can be subsequently to the roots and that. But as you know, if something's leaking and it causes damage over time, then it's not insured. But it is having a dramatic effect on being able to lease a property at the moment in town, and the tenants have moved out because it's been flooded a number of times, purely because the council drain in the back lane has not been cleaned or was cleaned, and overnight the storm was big enough, the wind and that blew the leaves over, and they just sealed the drain. The building that's been worst affected is the Fluker-Denton building, and Chris Allen looks after that, and he will get up at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, you name it. He hears rain, he's down there every time it rains at night cleaning that drain to try and stop the leaks. But sometimes it beats them and they've been flooded out. So, but over time, definitely it will cause an insurance problem. And for those people that are going to earthquake strengthen their building, have no idea what damage has been done to the foundations of the building before they start earthquake strengthening it. And roots going through a foundation or under a foundation can cause just as much damage, because if the tree dies off and they prune, the roots rot and it causes a cavity under the foundation and it can crack and then of course allow water in. So, I would think if it keeps going as it is now and the problems get greater, which they are getting greater all the time, then naturally, yes, the insurance companies will be advised, and whether they'll pay out or not, I don't know.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bernie. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Could I now invite Peter Everton to the table, please? Welcome, Peter. And you know how that operates, don't you? Yes. Good.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak for a couple of moments. I really just want to speak about the landfill, more on the history of the landfill. This landfill was originally put there as a dump for Levin in mid-1970s. Mayor Jack Balderson and the Mayor for Horowhenua's council, they started Jack Glenville, were desperate to find another place to take some Levin rubbish. So they filled all the metal pits up around Levin, and they were actually dumping rubbish over the embankment where Avenue Cemetery is now. So they were pretty desperate, and they approached us out there to see if they could use a gully up behind where Granger's house is as a temporary site till we could find a more suitable site. So that's didn't start in the 1950s, it started in the 1970s, as some reports say 1950s is incorrect. There were two hui's held. There were two hui's held in 94 and 95 by Mōpoko at Kawe Marae regarding turning the Hoko dump into a regional landfill. Because at that stage, every little town had its own dump. These hearings were attended by a large number of Maori people and Pākehā, and were chaired by Malcolm Guy, who was the mayor for the Horowhenua District Council at the time. At these meetings, the proposal was to turn the Hoko dump into a regional landfill. It was firmly rejected at those hearings. They did not want it. The people wanted the council to find a more suitable site. They were concerned about some of the effects that the present site was having. There was concern about the adverse effects on the Hoko stream, the Hoko Beach Road being unsuitable and unsafe for heavy vehicles, and the leachate could contaminate the groundwater, as well as odours coming from the landfill. So, those are the things that have been happening since the 1990s anyway. Prior to 2000, Mayor Tom Robertson and the Deputy Mayor at the time, Brendan Duffy, wanted to turn the Hoko landfill into a regional dumping site, saying that the dump would be a revenue stream for the Horowhenua Council. In other words, it would make money. We all know how much money it made. So after mediation hearings held in the council chambers in Bar Street, and then at the Bar Street, well, at those mediations that I attended, the lawyer, Andrew Cameron for the council, and Greg Ball, the engineer, they said if we were to lose a case by taking it to the Environmental Court, they would sue the people objecting. So a number of those people pulled out, like Rand Jacobs, the Grangers, I think Charles, maybe, Vivian Toeki. because they said they couldn't afford to lose their homes if we lost the case. But there were three of us that persisted, took it to the Environment Court. We weren't able to stop the dump, but we certainly got some strong conditions that were part of the resource consent issued in 2020. Then in 2008, I think it was, Mayor Duffy agreed to take the rubbish from Kapiti, approximately 25,000 tonnes, which is two-thirds of to what Levin was doing. Levin was doing about 12,000 tonnes at the time. He said the council would make millions of dollars for taking this extra rubbish from Kapiti. Well, we've never seen it. I used to come along here to make submissions, say, show me the money, but they never did. You're right, in about 2008 also, a parliamentary commission for inquiry to investigate the breaches of the resource consents was held at Ngātaka Marae. And I'll just read from...
We do only give 5 minutes for this, and there may well be some questions that people have of you. So I just wondered whether you could wrap it up.
Okay, I was just going to read out what the Commission for Inquiry said, if I could. Some of the things she said. The Parliament Commissioner for the Environment, Dr. Jan Wright, reported that the Horowhenua landfill she says there has been a history of resource consent condition breaches on this site, for some of which have been recurring. And I'll just leave it at that, but there's quite a lot of others she wrote here, so you want me to wrap it up? So these breaches are still continuing even up to 2022. I'd just really like to remind the new councillors that we have here today about the history, and say that here today on this matter, simply because of the actions or inactions of previous councils regarding the landfill. So the new councillors need to make sure they don't make the same mistakes as the previous councillors and leave a mess for the future generations to fix. They need to fix it now. So that's all I really like to say.
Are there any questions for Peter? Councillor Tamihana.
Nei rā te mihi ki a koe e te pā. He tuku ngā mihi whāraki hia, ngā kaupapa, ngā whakapapa e pāna ki ngā whenua tuku iho mā tātou katoa. Tēnei te tuku mihi ki a koe. I was just acknowledging Matua Peter for coming here today and laying his kōrero down to us at this table. It's really important that you share that history with us. And I also want to acknowledge all our whānau that sit here, both my raukawa and my muaipoko, connected whānau for the passion and the display and the fight that they have to want to correct the hara, the hurt. And so I don't have a question other than to say that myself is very aware of the issue. As an incoming councillor, I certainly will do my best to advocate that we need some closure and we need some clear guidance to enact what has been asked of us. And I think there's been enough historical evidence provided that council do understand, but there's a decision that has to be made. Some of it's inherited, but I just really wanted to take that opportunity to acknowledge you for continuing to bring this kaupapa to us. It's such an important one for this council to consider, and so that's me just saying thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for those lovely words.
Councillor Grimston.
Afternoon, Peter. Thank you for coming. In terms of the agenda today, the purpose of the report and the decision we're going to make is around the remediation options relative to the old dump. Have you had a chance to have a look at the best practical options that were sitting before us? And from a personal sense, are you supportive of what is being proposed by council officers for council to adopt?
Yes, I have the report and I have read them, and I think it's a good initial start, but it's going to be a long, long road, I believe.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your time as always. Could I now invite Eugene Hanare, please, to the table? Oh, bugger, I've done that wrong. Kia ora. Eugene, just turn on your button, please, so that we can all hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, Benny. For those who don't, I'm local landowner and trustee on some of the Māori freehold lands that trust us. Quite a few of them, Tokea ones, Waranikiri one, and also the lands on the western side, which we lease to peanuts. They're on the western side of the lake. But I just firstly want to lead to all of the councillors today, especially Mike Bananga, who been made appointments. We gained appointments here from Tanina, Tanaka Makas, Kia ora to Mahi, is the big Mahi here, and also Justin, and me out to you too, my cousin from Ngāti and also my cousin Piriera. So to all the distinguished councillors, kia ora, and you've got a big job ahead of you. So I'm going to start with a bit of background like Peter has here, just a little bit. I've been involved in an application of what Peter was talking about. The application I actually applied for was to have the objection of the waste liquid pond that was at the landfill. So we managed to have that consent overruled, and the consent authority declined that consent. So that was a big plus for just newbies. 28 years ago, we started in '95, as Peter said, with various huis, and involving various groups. And these groups were key to the success factors that were leading forward when this landfill was being proposed. So the application of, that we won was appealed by the Horowhenua District Council, and that sent us to the Environmental Court with the then CEO, I forget what his name was, Peter? The CEO who we had the Environmental Court. Anyway, we managed to come away with that from that court hearing, a 10 point condition in the consent. We weren't prepared to have it any less. That consent is bounding, like I've seen in some of your reporting in Kia ora, Manek, of your report for the landfill, the BPO, and it would suggest that some of that earlier engagements and arrangements were done through a legal bounding agreement with the NLG. Now, the NLG is a standalone group. We were awarded the conditions. Both myself and Peter were the applicants in the Environmental Court. We forked out $30,000 in repair. But we forked out $30,000, but Andrew Cameron wanted us to pay the cost of the whole Environmental Court. And you can imagine how much that was costing. It was over $300,000
there's no way we were going to do that. So the judge she held a reserves on cost, and unfortunately, this council couldn't get the money off us. But she was adamant that we had every right to take this case to appeal, and we won it. Unfortunately, we didn't get there over the finish line with the other consents, which is consent to hear, consent to land, all those other 6 key elements to the consent. But we were happy with the one that we did get, and the 10 conditions on agreement with the neighbourhood liaison group. Now, the appointment came from the judge. She said to go back into community and form a liaison community group, and that is a community group that we can have be assured that it has a bounding legal framework, statutory appointment. So we were happy with that, and we went along with the desired preferred options of how we should go forward. Our role was from the judges that we were put in there and appointed as virtually watchdogs over the council because of the manner or behaviour and as it was mentioned, some of the people who dropped off the applications was one who would want to have been advised by a legal representation of the councils that they could be looking at costs. So there was no-brainer for them because they didn't want to have a cost awarded against them. So that's a little bit of history of the NLG group. Not to be confused with the PNG group. The PNG group is solely developed by the council and other parties and various groups. They weren't legally bound or restrained like the NLG group is. They've got the consent resource conditions from the environmental group. So their standing and status had standing orders.
Sorry, Eugene. I just also don't want to interrupt, but we do need to wrap this up.
I'll get to
You could finish with is whether you agree with the best practical options that are contained in the agenda.
It's really important that you hear this because then there's a bit of clarity that is reigning, and you're not second guessing or assuming these things are facts. So just in that, I'm also, as you know, Bernie, your land next door neighbour. I am the chairman of the trust that own the property next door, and we've been affected by all of the elements that come off the district council's property, and this is leading into this report that was prepared by various groups. I'd like to think that some other groups were involved in, putting together their ideas or having an input, especially the owners next door. I can talk to that. The owners next door have been there for a long, long time, and we're placed to protect and to look after the whakapapa of the people who rest over there in the urupa or sacred place called Kaumakarau. So this place.
Eugene, sorry. So today for us is about deciding what the next step in the process is.
These directly impact on
the
owner next door.
There'll be plenty of opportunity for the owners and those to be involved.
What you want me to lead to, Danny, is the report that was made. I have read it, and it has some errors in it. The errors are mainly of binding agreements. I can take one for fact. I don't mind you choosing a contractor to go and do remedial work on the present cracking up cell that's falling apart. So we need somebody immediately in there, and it can't be someone who's going to contract a different one every week.
It needs to be the consistent one who know what they're doing. We need experts in there, and it's probably best that you look in your own neighbourhood, with your neighbours being contractors to tartans. Now, this is which is handy for the council, because they don't have to go very far to find a contractor.
I'm sure that'll be
So
considered.
that is, for my consideration on that part, go for it. I'm going to plug up for the contractors, but just saying, that's up to you who you pick, but I think you pick the best ones who do the best remedial work, and I think you'll find that who I've just spoken of is in the right vicinity with the right core business that be able to provide you with what you're seeking in that first one, in the first identified.
I'm sure we'll take all those things into consideration, Eugene.
So, moving on, if you've got the folder here, I'd just like you to direct you to the page, which is an overview of the land, out of your folders, and it is on page one. It's on page 126, and there's the photo there of the landfill. And this is the I have a bit of an I've got to check what the naming of an adopted naming of a drain. That drain is not Tartana's drain. That drain is actually Horowhenua District Council's drain, because the residue that's coming off the land that's going onto Tartana's is from the Horowhenua District Council's land. So you're importing your waste or your hazarded pollution to another property, which I've outlined here. You see a line going across here, which they've named, and I would make objection again to that name being used, because they're family of mine, and I don't want them to be associated with a lead-shaped drain that's carrying poison over to this area here. So it goes, as you can see, the line follows, and then it straightens up and goes straight over to the Horowhenua Beach Road, which then, by the looks of it, goes under the road for an unconsented caveat. You need a caveat to get into the under that road to take this stuff that out of this drain and put it over the road. So once you get over the road, you get to another property, and this is where I'm leading to now, is that the property over the road belongs to my family. We have the certificate of title, and you have no authority to import your pollution onto our land and then into the stream. So we take it as we just, as it wasn't known until I read this, so I've identified it, and I'm correcting it now, that this land here belongs to the Horowhenua land, and you're importing hazardous substances onto our land. It speaks about that particular project of the Tartana's restoration plan for that area, and the $300,000 that you're seeking to drive that restoration project. My issue is that there's been no involvement with the neighbour who it impacts on, who it affects, which is me. So I've got to.
Eugene, that's why we're meeting today, so we can start that process so that you can.
So this document that you are wanting to approve, I would not approve that yet, because it's still in infancy stages. It needs to go to the appropriate people who have the statutory obligations legally on that piece of land. And we're talking also about the stream. That stream has an easement over it, and you'll need a super consent resource to discharge anything into that stream. But it's telling me from your experts that it's going straight into into the stream. So
Eugene, sorry, I am going to have to stop you there. Sorry.
I think just finish off.
We get the message.
Because it's all got to do with the document that you're writing, there's got a few errors in it. Right, for instance, it's got in there to negotiate and to have agreements with local iwis. And for mine, it's not an iwi issue. This is a landowners issue.
Sure.
So the landowners.
Sorry, Eugene, did I hear right that you had a meeting with some officers yesterday where some of these things were raised?
Not these things, because I never had the opportunity of reading the best practical options, and now I have critiqued some.
Okay, so
that, and I'm advising you.
can we have that? Can you let us know in writing what those issues are?
Well, I'm telling you now. We're not going to get anywhere by writing each other's memorandums or letters. I'm stating it now. It's been noted and recorded on the minutes.
Thank you. We will note them. There is a question I've got from a councillor if you're ready for that.
Yep, I'll just finish off. The arrangements with the landfill and what they were seeking, it's enormous, an enormous task. These matters have been bubbling for some time, and we've come to the forefront of it now. And with the environment of what we just had with recent, the Mighty Land, the tribunal, the Waitangi Tribunal, proceeded here last week, and they haven't got much good things to say about the Horowhenua Council. I'll tell you now, they have not got very good things to say about you and your behaviour to the owners, your behaviour and your disrespecting of people. Now,
Sorry, look, Eugene, with all due respect, I'm sorry. That conversation is not appropriate at this table.
Well, it's a fact, because some of us,
regardless of whether it's a fact or not, there will be an opportunity for us to get feedback from the Waitangi Tribunal if they have got some concerns about the way that we've behaved, and that's why we're trying to initiate some response and fix up some of the issues that have been caused over the years.
Well, it starts here, Bernie.
Well, that's what we're listening to you now.
Judge Fox has told us that we are the owners of the land, and you are the partners who are on behalf of the ground. So we are partners with you, not with anyone else, not with Lincoln or any other iwi or anything, but we have a direct impact with you being the owner of that property next door, and that being affected by your importing
Understood.
waste and pollution onto our land. So I've got to stand up for the rights of my beneficial owners. I've got 99 first cousins, and that goes and generates into the second level of about 300. And you can imagine how much it is now. So I'm responsible to that line of beneficiaries.
And that's why we're listening to you now, usually. So, look, I'll just get Councillor Jennings to ask you a question.
Sorry? Eugene, I've just got a question. One thing that you said during your presentation was that you're wanting councillors to pause making a decision around today.
Absolutely.
And I'll be upfront with you. I have some challenge with that, and I would like to get your response to it, which is that if we did pause, that for me would put us in a situation where we're potentially going to end up breaching the landfill agreement, because it has certain obligations on councils around time frames. And so can you just respond to that? What your view?
But those matters, you shouldn't really hinge on those matters, because they're not important matters to Māori. Those are time frames that can be extended easily through an application. But in saying that, an extension or an existing conditions can be sought. But what I'm saying is, kia tūpato, te huarau tika. Your pathway forward will eventually come to a head where you will have to deal with the people who have the appropriate frameworks that actually support their claim. And our claim is that we have a land that's been see more cultural frameworks wrapped around the thinking of your best practice moving forwards, because it's non-existent. So that framework of Māori's importance to Māori, the landowners, is a very high important value that you should have with us as partners. And I'm only speaking as the landowner and as the chairman of that trust, who is guardian of that particular land. So thank you for that question. Kia ora. Now, patoe anō.
Yeah, you have to push your button.
Oh, yeah.
Again, thank you for coming today and sharing your whakaaro, and Uncle Jacko too. I do have a couple of questions, because and Sam's Councillor Jennings is right. To pause the process now will put council in jeopardy. I don't think there's any doubt of that, and we actually have members of the groups that you're mentioning here. I suppose one of the things I'm feeling here is some disconnect between the two groups you've mentioned, but also landowners. So council really needs some guidance from you, I think, in terms of what that what does that look like going forward for you gentlemen to assist us, because there's some really good things in correspondence we're hearing from the two different groups. But what I want to know from you is what is the process that you see going forward here? Because if we pause this, that pauses your remediation, that pauses the ability for council to now carry out starting the rongoa, repairing it. Yeah, that's the first question. Well, yeah, do that one.
Again, that's easily remedied by a simple application of extension. So those are council, regulations and committees that are able to do it. In this instance, you need to think, the rush is not really warranted, because we ain't going nowhere. The landfill is definitely, causing some a dispute between the consent applications being able to hold whether or uphold the legal obligations that they have there. But yeah,
Okay, turn the mic off again. Look, thank you for that. What I'm really trying to get down to here is, because there are different groupings here, council actually needs some assurance that the steps they're taking right now to remediate the site are the right steps. And I suppose what we're looking for is some clarity around, there's some options being presented, and I've already heard from Peter that those options don't really encapsulate anything. Are there anything else that's been missed in consideration around it?
regarding the natural swamp, the natural swamp waterways or wetlands, these were naturally formed, and this whole area of the landfill was a natural wetland. I'm not too sure if the council have consented partners to cap that natural wetland, but for mine, we've missed a huge involvement in being able to provide appropriate advice in terms of the wetlands, the swamp, and how it actually held sustenance for us as owners for a long period of time. And so this natural wetlands, swamplands, has been decimated by capping. I'm not too sure if they're legal, what the legal status is of capping that land, but it's had a huge footprint change from a natural wetland marsh swamp that's been changed. It's been totally changed.
Thank you, Eugene. Look, I am going to have to hold it there. Thank you very much for your contribution today. I can assure you we are listening and we do hear what you have to say. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've got to stand up and speak of the rights of those landowners and all those past ones buried over our Koromaka Road. They're paramount. They're not your average block Maori. They come from the paramount, the first inhabitants of the series. So we are charged with protecting that area. And, we would like to, we're willing in your documents. You mentioned that iwi and willing owners, landowners, we're willing to engage with you and to try and find resolutions and how you can be abiding by your consents, and we'll be satisfied with those consents being applied. So I can't see them being applied at the moment because we've been not being a part of the prepared document where we're not even mentioned there as a neighbour. But that you're wanting to use our land, so I've got to get up here.
Thank you, Eugene. Appreciate that.
Okay, so thank you once again. Kia ora.
Charles, would you like to join us?
What is the issue we're talking about now?
Welcome, Charles. And Vivian, are you joining? You are? Okay.
So, what is the issue we're talking about now?
The items that you sought to speak to us about, which, from what I understand for you, are 6.1, the lease for the new Live-In Wairariri Surf Lifesaving Club building, 6.2, the Oxford Street plane trees, and 6.3, the Live-In landfill old dump remediation.
Kia ora. So, do I get 10 minutes for each issue?
No.
Because I am going in relation to standing orders.
Sorry?
Each issue is different. So I'm relating to standing orders.
5 minutes is what we allow for public participation. You've got 5 minutes, Charles.
Right, okay. That's where you go. So the Wairariri Surf Club. Way back a while ago, I put in a submission to do with the Wairariri Surf Club. I objected to it for certain reasons. The commissioners at the time, which one was the councillor, totally ignored what I'm saying. Now, I've got maps here from the Royal Commission of 1896, from the mountain to the sea, and it talks about things like the walkway around the lake goes right out to the sea, goes right out to the Ohio River, goes right out to Manawatu River. And from the chain strip, is from the chain strip, the accretion, and the high tide mark, right? So the land where you've got where the surf club is Māori communal land, and I can prove all that. So it's a confiscation. Now, in saying that, I totally support the Wairariri Surf Club and what they do, totally. But the rules that you people have done on this confiscation of Māori lands, and I can prove it with other maps, and the thing that was done by surveyors in 27th of September 2010, and I've got maps here that can prove all this. That the trouble with you people, you might go on the Reserves Act or the Local Bodies Act, but you don't look at the laws of land. I know these things. My ex-partner is a legal person today. She's an adjudicator and whatever, and she did 10 years in Waikato University, so I know things that she teaches me. So I'm saying, I support, but what you're doing is you're blackmailing the surf club. That's what you're doing, because you think you're the owner of the land and you're putting rules and responsibilities onto these people. Give them a lease agreement for 30 years and blah, 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 whatever you got into this paper. And that's why I oppose what you're doing to these people. like I said, Māori with the Ngāti Rauka ki te tonga or Maupapa will support those people and what they're doing for the health and safety of people out there and saving lives in there. We as Māoris would support all that. And we would probably, if they could talk to us, we'd probably give them the land in that particular area of perpetuity. So that's that. These are the maps I've got and the proof and evidence that you people don't have. Right? So that's the Wairere circular. Now to the Oxford plain trees or whatever you call it, I totally support what Mr. Little was saying. Totally. Get rid of those trees. He laid it on the line. Everything. I only have 5, 6 to say I support the council in getting rid of the trees, even though you might have blah 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 in the papers. So that's that. Let's get down to the other one. What do we do? Live and Landfill agenda document, right? The other day we had a meeting with CE, Monique and Daniel. I thought it was a good meeting for a while, but it's the first time the Maori component and non-Maori component ever met with council to talk about it. Right? I don't know if Monique thought it was a good meeting or not, or Daniel, but it was okay. It was good. First time ever. We of the NFG have been totally left out of this. Totally. You meet with the PMG, who are they? Who are they? And you talk about the HECA agreement. Right, you go there. What is the legal? Have you looked at the legal implications of that document? I've seen official complaints about all that. Now, it's got my name on that document. What's my name doing on that document without my permission and other people's names on the document? Unsigned. And those who signed that agreement, there's no date. There's no seal on that document. So have they looked at the legal ramification of that document? I mean, what they had in that document might be a good thing, but look at it in a legal perspective. Especially Mr. Legal over here should be looking at these things. Now, the PMG, who are they? Who put them in? Okay, you might say it might be the Commissioner for the Environment or Environmental Court Judge, but whoop-de-doo. The real document is this. Yeah, you could look at this. I am the only named person in this resource consent. I am there because that's the Mopapa Wahitapu area. And under this map here, that area is what's called Subdivision 9. Right? It was given as a koha to Pānirakua. A koha. Do you understand what koha means? It's a gift. If you don't want that gift, you give that gift back. But the people who are in the partitions of Pānirakua didn't give that gift back to Mopapa. They didn't give that koha back. They half-loaded to someone else who loaded to someone else who now the district council owns that property. But it was a breach of tikanga Māori. Total breach. It's wahitapu. It was a marae sign of Mopapa. And usually you might talk about one of the uripas there. There are another 3 uripas there. I know exactly where they are. I was brought up with these things. I'm not on a map that from Atkins did. I was born, her uncle, Joe Tukaboy, he was my uncle. Come to me for advice because the old people taught me from the mountain to the sea. And then I got my European side too. I'm a tuakana, I'm a matamua, I'm a nahika, if you understand those words. My family comes from Power Manchus of 3 different tribes. And we come from Tohunga, Matakite Tohunga, people who see the future. I was brought up with those sort of things. You mightn't understand those kinds of beliefs, spiritual beliefs. So we get to the agenda. I'm doing it a lot quickly with my 5 minutes. Sorry, you know, pinch some of your time. Now you go through this document. I looked at this document to what we talked yesterday with Monique and Daniel. And I come up with these European words like deceit, deceiving, all sorts of words I come up with. You know, deceit, deceiving, untruth, misinformation, misleading, incompetence, false, misleading, untrue. I come up with these certain English words. Because you could look at this document and what it's got here. In bullet point 9, council engagement NLG. Rubbish. They might engage with some people of NLG. They didn't engage with Vivian, Jacko, or me, Eugene, Vivian Towick, and a few others. And the 2 late trustees, Dean Wilson and Yeah, no, Paki. So they didn't engage with us. They spent a lot of time, probably about 2 or 3 months, with PMG. But who are we? We're nobodies. We know the history like Peter does.
Sorry, Charles.
Yeah.
Can you tell
Okay.
us? Can you tell?
Okay, hang on.
Sorry, can you let me ask you a question?
Use the word of that document, iwi.
Can you
Iwi means all.
Can
of
you
the time.
let me ask you a question?
Yep. The answer is in the question, you know.
No,
Yeah.
the answer. The question is, do you agree with the best practical options that are contained in that agenda?
No, not all. That's why I'm talking about that word iwi in bullet point 5.12. Iwi. It's all. When has there been a huia a iwi of our tribe, Maupu, let alone Ngāti Rākua ki te tonga, to talk on the issues of whether they agree or not agree? So what's that word iwi doing in this primary document? Tell me. Tell me. There has never been a huia iwi of the people. The same as bullet point 9, iwi consideration. How can you have taken account iwi consideration if you haven't talked to the iwi? Or they haven't, as an iwi, had a huia iwi to discuss the issues. Tell me. So that's all false. It is truly false, especially for these new incumbents. Truly false. And you expect people like me to bow down to you? Rubbish. Rubbish. I've been in the game a long time. You think that this thing, landfill, is only one issue? I was fighting up against pollution, contamination in Taranaki. I was fighting on the Manawatu River with, what's her name, Christina Payton. Because I believe in the environment. Because it's the health and safety of the people and the generations to come. Kia ora tātou. Any questions? Thank you for the 10 minutes.
Thank you, Charles. And there's no doubt that you're a passionate man, and that you've got some views.
Oh, yeah, by the way, I've protested everywhere. Here in the streets, here, Palmerston North. I've even protested twice in Parliament about different issues and down Paparoon. I'm one of those. I'm not a tree hugger radical. I'm a people that cares about the people.
Vivian, I'm conscious that you asked for participation as well. Are you?
Yes, I do. I still want some.
Oh, okay,
I'm toning it down as we go.
Pardon?
I'm toning it down as we go.
Thank you. You can begin, if you would just mind turning Charles's off and then turning yours on, and away you go. Thank you.
I'm just going to elaborate on a bit of what Charles has said, because we have often come in here and said to council that MTA do not represent all of Maringham here in the Horowhenua, okay? There's 30 tribes they never even talk to. So we often say to you, please consult and talk and send emails out to the iwi themselves, because people need to have communication. It's with communication we grow and become better communities. Anyway, back to the landfill. Yes, this is why Tahu land, I'm nervous now. Why Tahu land? And there are 4 Europe out there. The lack of compliances have gone on for so long that the land is so contaminated out there, it's not funny. And that has been part of the landfill agreement, where there should have been daily cappings of the landfill, and they've never been done. 20 years on, the final cap has still not been done. Leachate is coming out from the south side onto Maori leased land and never been sampled from the F and G bores, and that's through the new cell. We keep saying this to some people, but some people don't listen. To the west and the north through the HS bores, especially HS1, the chemicals coming down from that one above Granges is really bad. Yes, coming onto your land, that's right. And where the HS3 one is, the chemicals that come out of there is really strange, because it dissipates somehow, and whether it going into the soil, Charles and I have often asked, could we get soil samples done by HES, by your land, Eugene? Or is it dropping into the deeper aquifer, which is possible? That there are everybody's focusing on this flow from the northwest, but there's a deeper aquifer that runs underneath there. The one thing about the Horowhenua is if you've lived in the country, you know the country, that there are deep rivers that run underneath this earth. You can hear them on quiet days. And that's all been built up with the swamp that's been here. This is a swamp country, regardless. As Pete says, about the 30 years at the Kabiya Marae, council were asked not to continue out there at the landfill site. But they said, please, we've got nowhere else, so we did it. And now we Hokio people are told, oh, you're looking bad because if we have to go and put our rubbish somewhere else, our rates will go up. We know the rates will go up. We've had this thrown at us for years, and so we've said nothing. Anyway, the finances will be greater, yes, we know, for tapping it. But if you want more growth, and as the lady said at the very first, she says the next generation will see this as a no-brainer, having that thing capped and out of it. But I'm listening to Eugene about the capping. Is that the fastest way of doing it? I wonder. Now, you guys, I don't know if any of you ever read it, but this is one of the Stantec reports. This one came out in January 2020. I'm just going to show to you that on this page here, 42 non-compliances with resource consent conditions. But does it get taken anywhere? No. All it gets recorded is a historic rate. These things should be showing up somewhere as historic rates. I mean, one time the E. coli was up to 4,000 units. And it's like, wow, you're not even supposed to be that high. But did the council care? Did anything happen through water and management with Mrs. Crawford? Nothing. We just go on to another 3 months and watch for more records come out. Anyway, thank you very much for my 5 minutes, Bernie.
Appreciate your brevity, Vivian. And there is a question from Councillor Grimsley.
Oh, yes.
So noting the decision we're making today is around the beginning of a remediation.
Yes.
And it does not preclude the council taking on additional actions later on. Fundamentally, are you supportive of the BPO actions as a start for the remediation of the old dump that includes putting a contractor onto site, that includes looking at the capping and includes the requirement to investigate further sites of contamination, particularly in the gully area and other aspects that are put forward in the BPO?
Look, I only just saw the BPO conditions yesterday when we asked for them to be sent out to all the NLG, which never happened. And yes, we do need to make a start. Okay?
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Geez, you only got 10 minutes.
Right.
Could I welcome Jenny Rowan to the table, please?
And David, welcome.
Kia ora, Mayor Bernie and councillors. Good afternoon. I'm very sad about what's happening here. I'm very affected by it, and so in some small way our submission today hopefully gives you another context. As a member of the PMG for the last 3.5 years, I do believe that we are at a crossroads of change for the better. We do support the options on the table today, albeit they are also part of the conditions of 2018 and possibly should have been enacted already. The context for my comments are underpinned by the belief that the operating landfill will be closed and the old landfills will be cleaned up. I do understand the impact of coming into council and having to deal with a matter of this magnitude. and the pressure for you to get this right once and for all. I also understand and have empathy with you about the pressures to make courageous decisions in the face of social, cultural, and financial cost to your communities, where a wrong must be put right. In light of recent events, and again today, in light of recent events relating to comments being made about the validity or otherwise of the court process of the PMG, the NLG, the CNLG are in, and by the way, they're all the same people. This is how we have operated over the last 3 years, and I thought I too would give you a little bit of history, particularly for those new councillors. The initial history starts as a result of consistent non-compliance by the council. The community took the matter to court, and towards the end of that hearing, the council came cap in hand to the community to settle out of court. The PMG came out of that as part of the settlement. The PMG is and does have legal status, and your council has recently reaffirmed that. David and I are the representatives of the Hokio community in Pariraukawa, and we have been selected by the community. This means we are bringing to the table their views and desires. We are not sitting here expressing our own views. In order for us to do that, we have met with a committed group over the last 3 years, bringing back to them the information from the PMG meetings, and in turn bringing their views back to the next PMG meeting with the council. In between that, and where possible, we have had NLG meetings here in this chamber and CLNG meetings, and to the best of our ability, we informed all groups of the council processes and thinking. The only time we had to be careful was around the Tatana land discussions, as there were commercial implications. David and I also do email reports to the team. Inside that, Charles Rudd, who is not a signatory to the PMG agreement, came to the meetings. He was welcomed and he participated. In my view, this was a transparent and as democratic as we could have it at the time. Over the time, the groups have raised awareness of this landfill impact on the wider community. This was evidenced by a number of submissions that came from the wider community through the last submission round. So here we are now to witness you make your first real decision that will put us on the right track to remediation and closing of the landfills. The discussion has widened for us to assist you in looking at options you might activate for the use of land around the landfills. You know now the history of this matter. I trust you've taken time to look at the Hokio Group's web page called Over It, and the disruption to the environment that this has caused, and especially on the local community. You are aware that the wider Horowhenua community is also very concerned about this blight on their landscape. You are hopefully also aware that this matter is going to take a few years to fix and will be a real cost to the ratepayer for a considerable time. I also know how that feels as a former councillor and former mayor. So I sincerely, on behalf of David and I and the PMG, I sincerely wish you all well in this decision-making process that you're in. And I believe you're being guided by committed staff and good evidence to date. From experience, just take a deep breath and start to put this matter to rest, and we will work with you to do that. Kia ora.
All right, Jenny, thank you. Any questions of Jenny and David?
Councillor Tamihana.
Yeah, no real questions again other than to thank you, but it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge Ngāti Pariraukaua today being here, and also to acknowledge the passing of Whai Francine and the Winiara whānau. So I would not want you to leave here knowing that you are in our thoughts, and our whānau in our thoughts. as well as our Miratana whānau and many others that have lost whānau recently. So, ngā mihi.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, David. And appreciate again your appearance here and the efforts that you are making in your seeking of whatever, the decision that we're in front of us today and in the future. Appreciate it. Thank you. Now, we're going to actually ask Natalie to come forward now. I hope you haven't gone to sleep there, Natalie. You all right? Okay. So, the other half of the presentation of our young leaders. So, welcome, Natalie. Hello. You know that button on the right-hand side of that machine there will enable us to hear you properly. Push the button, Natalie. Good.
Hello. So I was also able to take part in the MWLAS Future Leaders program with Jenna. It was awesome. And this is my project. If I can direct everybody's attention to the board. And there it is. So, yep. I'm just going to assume that we're all good readers in the room and say that you've read it all, right? We're good? Beautiful. All right, any questions? No? You good? Imagine if that's all I had prepared. Just kidding. It's not. And I also asked, and they said that I'm allowed to make a mess. So. Ta-da! Mine's going to be a bit lighter, a bit fluffier than the landfill, hopefully. Boom! Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou o tēnei rā. Ngā pōwhiri tātou. Here we go. Ko Chris, rawa ko Emily, rawa ko James, rawa ko Natalie, tēnei rōpū. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia ora everyone. My name's Nat. And this was my awesome team that I got to work with. I did want to mention them before I started because this is by no means just my work. I'm going to leave the microphone for a bit, wake you guys up with some sweets. You're welcome. Merry Christmas! Yes, I don't know who's going to clean this up, but I did get told it's okay. So, yes, so we are Pōwhiri. And isn't it crazy what a pop of colour and a little enthusiasm, maybe some gifts, can do to liven up a presentation? And that is pretty much the concept of our entire project. But I thought we'd better start with a proper introduction. Our goal for this project was to improve community well-being. I'm sure everybody in this room knows how broad a scope it is. It covers a lot of things. And so we wanted to focus specifically on improving community well-being through better engagement. We sat down as a group and decided, I'm in the youth space. I was in the customer experience team. James is the transport guy for NZTA. He's in charge of all the buses. Emily Dearest is a swim school instructor / admin officer. And Chris is the finance guy. So we cover a range of council. We have a lot of customer facing roles. And the one thing that kept on coming to our attention when we were trying to figure out what our project would be was the fact that there is a lack of understanding or a language barrier between council and community. And I'm sure it's something that you guys have discussed before, but it's something that we all in our separate streams of council work have identified as an issue. And so that's what we wanted to target. Some of you may be wondering why Pōwhiri, why the name Pōwhiri. And when you hear it, you think the traditional Māori welcoming ceremony, which is what it is. But we wanted to look at it in a different sense. If you look at the second half of the word, whiri, it translates to braid or to weave. And so that's the whole idea behind the traditional Māori welcoming ceremony, is to actually wave or braid the two. Braid or weave the two parties together. To become one people, not just to welcome someone onto your land or into your home, but to actually become one people. And so that is why we thought it was the perfect name for our project, because we want to help bridge the gap between community and council and improve community wellbeing overall. So the first step for us was to actually pinpoint what community wellbeing was. We did this by researching a bunch of community wellbeing documents. We literally just Googled it. And every council has their own kind of lens on how they look at community wellbeing. There's a bunch that look at it as te whare tapawha, and also overseas there's a large focus on physical wellbeing, so they'll organise group walks and taking care of the elderly, etc., etc. And so we kind of just encapsulated it all onto this one super boring slide. But it is to create a positive, safe and welcoming and friendly environment and community for residents to live and thrive in. And also to create positive and lasting relationships between councils and their community members. So we know that councils are integral to the wellbeing of the community. It's what we do. We provide essential services and work tirelessly in the background to keep everything ticking. And as those service providers, it's our responsibility to make sure that we cater to the needs that the people have. And so at the bottom, we can do it better, we can be better. It's true. So our research with the project, like I said, we were given a very broad scope. And initially we wanted to make a magical tool that fixed all of our problems, that answered everybody's questions for us. We wanted to make a kiosk. We thought it was a winning idea. We're like, we'll just pop an iPad in the ground somewhere, and then if anybody's got a question, they can go to that instead of coming to us. And then we had what we like to call the South Korea incident. Emily went over to visit her partner in South Korea, and they found our dream made manifest in the middle of the road, in the middle of Seoul, Korea, one of the most populated cities in the world, and thousands of people walked right by it. Nobody stopped to use it. And so we had to pivot pretty quickly on that, because Levin is not as big as Seoul, and if nobody's using it over there, why would they use it over here? And then also the question kept coming up, if we're going to direct them to another tool, why aren't they just using our website? Why aren't they just using our call centre? Why aren't they using the tools that we've already given them? And so that's what we wanted to look at instead. So we looked at how councils are currently connecting with our communities, how receptive the communities are to current council efforts, and what info community members want to know. And we did this by a whole lot of informal consultation, just sitting down with whoever we could grab a hold of, and picking their brains and seeing what their relationship with council was. What we found, unsurprisingly, not all customers are comfortable with digital. This may be because I admittedly spoke to 3 little old ladies, all named Susan, all like over 50. And then I realised that I was maybe typecasting with the people that I was talking to, but it was a prominent point that they all like to make, was that they just aren't comfortable with how fast technology is moving and they can't keep up, and they'd much rather receive something physical in the mail. There was a disconnect from council to people, unsurprising, we've all heard it before, and it just kept coming up over and over again. And the information that we give to people currently is not digestible. So if we go back to the first slide, that is literally a couple of graphs taken directly from council rates notices from here, from MDC, from Horizons Regional Councils. Those are just the ones that we were able to pickpocket because we had members from each of those teams. Surprisingly, we found that not everyone has an 0800 number. That is us included. We kind of got called out at the board meeting because there are a bunch of council and we're always preaching to the communities, let us know what the issue is, let us know when we're doing something wrong or if you think we could do something better, but then we give them an extra hurdle by making them pay for that service, which not everyone was very happy with. Surprisingly, not everyone has a welcome pack or a plan. When I worked in the customer experience team, we had a welcome to the district letter that we sent out and whatever, I guess, resources could fit in the envelope. But there isn't any real thought or love put into it. It's just something to tick a box. And also, surprisingly, the lack of response from councils when we reached out to actually do our research about this. Unfortunately, no one got back to us, which is not a good look on anyone. I had to go and hound Jake, but he's super busy, so don't give him too much flack. But we had to fight for that information, which I don't think should necessarily be the case. So, our focus, we thought, instead of pitching a brand new tool or a brand new idea to the board when we had the opportunity to talk to them, instead of doing that, we would just try and refocus on tools that we're already sending out to the community and reinforce the idea that reviewing what we already send out is just as important as rolling out all of these new things. So I really love the idea of hapori, and we did have some other awesome tools presented at that meeting, but we also thought it was important to highlight that we're already doing a lot. We just need to do it better. So we wanted to focus on the first impression that we make on newcomers or ratepayers to our community, and would do this through welcome packs. That's the idea. So I've got some more handouts for you, team. I'm coming around. Sorry, I also won't be speaking into the microphone. But these are what we were able to come up with, as I said, with a bunch of people who are not graphic designers, are not in the comms actually, and it's just an idea to dress them up, to get people excited about what council's doing. And we thought that the best first step to that would be a welcome pack. Anyways, we want to make sure that we make a lasting impression on newcomers to the community. We want to start off on the right foot, as I was saying before. As the service providers, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are putting in the effort to have a good relationship with them. And so it's a chance to better integrate newcomers and encourage greater engagement. If we reach out first, they're more likely to respond in a positive way. And then there's also the little envelope with the window is the annual check-in or the rates bill, which is usually seen as a negative. Nobody wants to pay the rates because they don't know what it's going towards. And so we need to put in the effort to make sure that we're educating them on what they're actually getting when they're paying that bill. So we can use the current bills that we're sending out as a tool to keep ratepayers in the loop. Maybe chuck in a free coffee voucher every so often to make them feel loved and wanted in the community. Alright, going back to my hideous first slide, which I'm very proud of. Is there a laser pointer? Yes. This table is straight from a Horowhenua District Council rates notice. It's a bit squished, but it's ugly. This graph over here has got nothing to do with anything, but it's the most interesting thing on the page, and that is an issue. So this is what we're talking about, is all of the documents we've got, all of the things that we send out to our community members just need a bit of TLC, and we really want to push that, and we kind of thought we could do that by making these example packs for you of what it could look like from people with zero experience in the field. Alrighty, so we proposed a process at the end of our presentation to the board the MWLAS board, which was to establish a team to take on the endeavour. We do know we're making a lot of work, killing a few trees by doing it all paper, but digital is also an option. But as I said, we got the direct feedback from the community that that's not what they wanted, so we put our effort into making a physical pack. But if you go out to the community and they say we want it all digital, we love the trees too much, then that's good. Make it digital. So research existing material, find out what we're doing currently, and think how we can make it better. How can we improve it by co-designing and engaging with the public. We spoke with a lot of our comms teams across the 3 councils that we were a part of, and co-design as a concept came up a lot of times, and that's just the idea that we're working with the community for the community, and so that is an integral part of the process that we were proposing. And then finally you'd shortlist and finalise hopefully we were kind of pitching towards a template for welcome packs over the district, or over the region really, but even if it's just smaller steps, making a template for HDC to stick to would be awesome as well. So in conclusion, I'll just keep reiterating what I've been saying before. As the service providers, it's up to us to meet the needs of the people that we're serving. So you don't need to overcomplicate it. We can use what we've already got. We've got some awesome resources, some awesome members of the comms team. Shout out to you guys, you're killing the game. But we just need to put a little more love into it. Like how I started the presentation, by giving you gifts, by making it range and feedy. It doesn't have to be this extravagant, but it can be better. And so that is, or was, our final note to the board. A bit tongue-in-cheek, but we couldn't really phrase it any better. It's just be better. And that's it. Any questions?
Congratulations, Natalie. That's another brilliant sort of proposition that you're putting in front of us that I think certainly needs some attention. There's absolutely no doubt that the impression that we send new residents, or how we welcome those that are joining the district, is hugely important. And they do judge on first impressions. We all do. We can't help it. So if we get it better and do it better, I'm sure the relationship that they have with council will be a lot more positive than moaning about their dog registrations or their rates or whatever it is. So, and I think we are all impressed that the future of this council is in great hands with people like yourself and Jenna working for us. And I know you do some fantastic work over in that youth space. Please keep it up, and thank you very much again. The Deputy Mayor's promised to get the vacuum cleaner out and clean it up for you. Yeah. Point of order. Councillors, we might take a toilet break for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Right, we'll get started, everyone.
You're just going out there. Thanks, Grayson. Cheers. Welcome back, everyone. Look, so we can now move to item number 3 on our procedural agenda. Which is late items. Just noting that we have a late item, which we will seek to do as 6.4 on the agenda, which is, as you've been advised, a progress report and scope of the draft long-term plan amendment. So just noting that, do we have to acknowledge receipt of that? So moved by Councillor Jennings and seconded by Councillor Brannigan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? There being none, thank you. Confirmation of minutes. Can I move that the minutes of the meeting held of Council on Wednesday the 23rd of November 2022 be confirmed as a true and correct record? Move Councillor Jennings, seconded Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And that the minutes of the meeting of the in-committee meeting of Council held on Wednesday the 23rd of November 2022 be confirmed as a true and correct records. Moved by Deputy Mayor Allen, seconded by Councillor Horowhenua. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now, in the interests of members of the public that are within chambers and who have also been part of public participation, I am going to move item 6.2, 6.3, the landfill oil dump remediation options to the table first. So, Daniel, are you ready for that? So we're on page 103 of your agenda. The purpose of this report is to discuss the remediation options for the closed oil dump portions of the Levin landfill site. This decision will require approval of funding for the initial recommended remediation actions, as well as approval to progress further remediation action investigations. This will include bringing back a request for approval for those stages once the scope of work and timeframes are further developed. So while Daniel's just getting ready, can I move 3.1 and 3.2 that the report be received? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Horowhenua. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Daniel.
Good afternoon. So firstly, I would like to acknowledge the support, the patience and the time and collective and constructive effort of a number of members from NLG, PMG and the wider community groups that have inputted. Some of those here today that we've heard from this evening and the others that have left, but yes, collective efforts, and I can share the comments from Charles earlier that I thought yesterday was a great meeting or a good meeting. So some good progress in that space. It's a challenging time to move forward this side of Christmas. We've obviously put it forward a recommendation today. I'm supported by the brains and the technical analysis online to answer any questions by Lindsay from Morrison Lowe. And there's obviously a process that we've been through to analyse a lot of the data, the problems, the concept treatments, and that's presented to you today as a range of options that we stipulate as the BPO. We've also acknowledged that there is a consent requirement. So back in 2019, there was a number of options and concepts that were developed, and off the back of that consent requirement, which really looked at I suppose 3 options: to cease, to materially reduce, or if that wasn't possible, to look at environmental offsets. So that was sort of the range of concepts that we had to mitigate under the consent conditions, and the proposal that we put forward in the BPO, we believe is a targeted approach to actually address all 3 of those matters. So cease, materially reduce and mitigate through a process of capping the old landfill site, controlling the stormwater, whilst also investigating any area of concern which we intend to address within the budget allowance, or come back once we have further detail and information around that. So very much so today, happy to take questions around each of those specific sections, and particularly would like to clarify further the one around the willing landowner and further wider environmental mitigations. That the process today is seeking funding so we can initiate a conversation, start to identify which of those landowners within and what those opportunities are within that piece of the project. So the funding would actually be set aside, and we called it almost seed funding to initiate a wider project around the Tatana Drain and Horowhenua Stream.
Any questions or clarifications from Daniel? Yes, Jennings.
Daniel, you heard from one of the submitters previously about this, I guess, an expression of a view around pausing or delaying. And I just wanted to clarify whether if council gave any weight to those views around pausing. My understanding is that would obviously delay the program of works probably until the next season, and therefore, assuming that a decision was made in the first half of next year, that the works that would be needed would then be delayed till next season, therefore putting us in breach of the landfill agreement, and essentially meaning that the commencement of the remediation, the commencement of the repair, I think that Councillor Tamihana referenced, in all likelihood, we're talking about late 23, possibly even 2024 before that could occur. Is that your understanding?
So Mr. Hanare isn't here to respond, but my understanding of his comments were get on with the maintenance contractor. There's some locally, consider them in your decision-making process. Get on with fixing and capping the site, but take a pause on who and how we engage around the further treatments, particularly around the Tatana Drain, which I've taken an action. Tatana Drain is named in the consent, and it is sort of being formally adopted in a lot of documentation, but I'll seek formal approval to continue to reference that as Tatana Drain. But certainly when we start to look into the Horowhenua Stream and the further engagement required with the lake trustees, with willing landowners, that really was where I understood the pause was required. And in some ways that the project and the funding commitment we're seeking today is to go away and actually start to develop that as a project. So we're seeking that mandate from council, and for that to become a structured project that could be reported on and could have a number of hold points. But if we don't get that direction to go away and start to initiate those conversations and with a funding commitment, it does make that hard to start to advance conversation with landowners without a financial support to actually deliver anything off the back of that. So we're really seeking that mandate, but really important that we gather up the list of key partners, stakeholders, landowners really early in the process and bring that back before getting too far down the track.
Councillor Tamihana.
Kia ora, Daniel, thank you for that. Look, I only had one follow-up really from the information we've received, and it was around the engagement of a maintenance contractor to go in there and do that. The only consideration I wonder, was there a consideration within that component to have an environmental specialist from Papua New Guinea considered in that space? Because I did note in some of the reports that came through, there was some feedback that said they felt that employing a contractor full time was a large use of money. But I think too, when you hear a lot of the conversations going on around those environmental factors and concerns, is there an ability for council to support within that funded that I think it was 300k that was set aside in there, was worded towards iwi support or whatever it was. Is there a consideration actually to approach and find the expertise to work alongside the maintenance contractor? Yeah, kia ora.
I'll just clarify around the term, and just that there may be a perception that it's 130k per annum allocated, that's a salary for a nominated contractor, but actually that's an estimated cost that we put together, which would make up, excavator, truck, a contractor, the regular monthly gas monitoring where we need to go and do some weed eating to, before they can put, bentonite down to look at sampling gas. So it's actually having a consistent person there that can partner with the council officer staff, that knows the site over time, gets to get a really good understanding, can spot issues and really partner and be that person on the ground, or grounds person and such. So that was really the estimated cost for that. In some ways, we need to, get on with that process to ensure that we can deliver that within that budget. But it's we thought it was a fairly reasonable estimate of cost for that contractor type arrangement. We haven't at this stage costed into that or finalised any iwi interface, which obviously we need to ensure that we develop that process, and we're not in the position here today to say we've got nominated representatives. So there's further engagement in that space required around iwi and hapu engagement.
Yeah,
we could be guided on that by elected members today if there's if that was to be included in the resolution. But it's.
I think the only reason I raise it is because it's worded in the iwi engagement. So what does that look like? And that's me asking, because I actually don't understand what it means in the document. But what I do know is if it's iwi engagement, then they may wish to play a role in the oversight of the remediation. And I don't intend that would be a full-time role. I just think, is there an ability to allow for that to happen? And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Just also want to reference that we do have an upcoming decision in June next year around the future of live-in landfill, and whatever path that takes would likely initiate a more significant longer-term view for the landfill, depending on which path it takes. So that in itself could be a wider opportunity, and also around the Tata Drain and Hokia Stream. The work plan this summer was really around maintenance type activity of capping the landfill, but acknowledge your comments and would certainly look to partner up on those longer term projects.
Councillor Proctor.
I just wanted to say thank you for your hard work and reports that have been provided to us over the last couple of weeks. I take comfort in your last comments that this is going to be an ongoing challenge for us. And also, I'm comforted by what you've put in 6.3, that these actions do not preclude any further remediation actions or enhancements taken on the sites in the future as well. So this will obviously be an ongoing project for us with ongoing costs. Thanks.
In light of those comments, Councillor Proctor, you're prepared to move 3.3 in block?
Why not?
Why not? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tamihana. So, any debate or discussion? Councillor Branning.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Daniel, for the report. I guess it's a question for CE. around what we've seen today. And rest assured, I support the BPO. I think it's good. It's great, and we've seen we've done the workshops, done site visits, and we've got a pretty good understanding now of what we're dealing with. In terms of what we've seen today, in terms of the relationship between NLG and PMG, which is the basis of the landfill agreement, born out of the landfill agreement, the Environment Court process, etc. And listen, we've been around the table. I've been around the table for 9 years, and we've been working through the landfill issues since then. In the last three years or so, we've had the NLG and PMG come to fruition, and a lot of dialogue, a lot of work has gone on. Some good, and obviously what we've heard is some not so good through that process. And suddenly, in the last few weeks, we see some kind of, implosion in that relationship. From a council point of view, and again, it's guidance from the CE, without wanting to hold up anything, what is the risk here for us in terms of our legal obligations, where we have these groups that are Neighbour Liaison and PMG, and representing the Hoku community, and now we have that wide disconnect that we've all seen, and I don't think we can ignore. And I just want someone got some guidance and I guess some comfort around the table that we still, by going ahead, we're not putting ourselves in a place where ultimately we might not want to be. So, I don't know if you can answer that, I'm not so sure. And I don't intend for it to hold up this particular process, because Daniel's clearly said there's some work to go ahead and get undone. But I'm just not comfortable with not addressing it in some form.
So you hear some comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Brannigan, there's a lot in that question, and I think it's worth acknowledging that there is a lot of hurt and a lot of history around the landfill issue, and so with that comes a whole lot of emotions and feelings, and I think that's what we're seeing. All I can give elected members assurance of is that I have absolute confidence in our engagement approach. The landfill agreement is very clear about the role of the PMG and the role of the NLG, and I'm certainly confident that between Mr. Haig and myself, the number of meetings and dialogue that we're having is meeting, I think, the intent and the expectations of that landfill agreement. What I've heard today is that more is wanted from some people, and I'm not sure whether we're resourced to achieve that, and I'm not sure whether the timeframes associated with a pending landfill decision will necessarily allow that. And so when we think about some of those decisions in front of council around the compromise, part of the process in front of us is a compromise about how fast or slow we go. But certainly this is an inclusive and collaborative process, and everyone's always been invited to be part of conversations. And so kind of to the end of your question, it was, well, what is the legal risk? There is legal risk associated with everything council does, but I'm confident we're acting in good faith and within the intent of the landfill agreement.
Councillor Grimstone.
My view, Councillor Brannigan, around it is that our role is that we need to have comfort that we have engaged appropriately with all stakeholders. And when I say all stakeholders, it's not contrary to Mr. Hindley's specificity to landowner versus iwi. I think it's all stakeholders basically covers anyone that has an interest in this matter, whether they be a neighbour, a resident in the Horowhenua community, or a ratepayer in the Horowhenua. That will, as we continue to move forward, we have an obligation to hear and involve and provide information to all stakeholders and provide them an opportunity to do so. So I think I feel very comfortable with where we're at in terms of our level of engagement, and I think we can take some learnings forward to improve that, to widen the scope, and to ensure that all stakeholders are heard.
Do the mover or seconder of the motion recommendation wish to speak to it? No. Cool. So the motion is on the table then. I'll put 3.3 in its entirety and I won't read it out, but you will all understand the nature of what is being proposed here, and so all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, let's then continue with 6.1, item 6.1 on the agenda, which is page number 7. Thank you all. Thank you. Which is the lease for the new Live-In Waitariri Surf Life Saving Club building. Seek approval from Council to enter into a lease with the Live-In Waitariri Surf Life Saving Club for the new surf club building at Waitariri Beach. Can I move 3.1, 3.2? Report be received, seconded by Councillor Young. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Carried. Okay, so you will see a number of options that are in front of us for this item. And 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3. And welcome Sean and Arthur to the table. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks very much for your worship and councillors for having us to talk to this particular item. Not too much to say about it. I'm assuming everybody's read the report. The one thing I would say that's perhaps not brought out in the report quite as much as it should be is that one of the reasons the Surf Life Saving Club are asking us to move this quite quickly is they've put in a number of external applications for funding, and part and parcel of a couple of those applications is that they get some sort of indication from council that council will be keen to provide a lease for them moving forwards. Sean's done probably a lot more on this than I, so I will pass over to Sean for any questions that there may be.
Does 3.4 million not indicate that we're supportive of this?
Yes, I think it probably does, but as I say, the funders do require specific boxes to be ticked, should we say.
Yes, so maybe just to be specific on that, Eastern and Central Community Trust have specifically asked for a copy of the lease.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Speaker. Just a few questions, gentlemen. In sort of two categories. One is about the application of the policy in terms of determining the the subsidised amount. And so, from what I can see, just looking back at sort of the indication of the annual fee of about $200, I think it was the. So, based on that, and assuming a 90% subsidy, which is the maximum provided for under the policy, we're talking about an annual market rent of around $2,000, right? So, how have we? Do you want to respond?
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Jennings. So the community leasing policy does dictate how that lease is calculated. There's a number of criteria that's applied through that leasing policy, including about the organisation status, and really importantly as well, the community outcomes that are derived out of that activity that's been done out of that building. Also, things like the number of members that they have as their club, and also the number of income sources they do. So that all of those calculations are done to calculate what that level of subsidy is on that lease. In terms of the calculation, that's the subsidy part of the policy. In terms of the actual determining the rental figure itself, it's based on the rateable value of the land. So the area of the lease is proportioned with the larger rateable value of that title, and then with a 1 to 4% return through that policy applied. So, and then the subsidy is applied after that to get that $200 rental.
Councillor Jennings, were you still seeking some more questions? Sorry, so you'll need to just turn your thanks, Councillor.
Look, thanks. I mean, I'm certainly not signalling that I was keen for a market rate to be charged. I was signalling I'd actually prefer a peppercorn. But so my next question was around consistency with Foxton Surf Life Saving Club in terms of the annual rental and the lease period. If you could talk to that. And the other thing I was hoping you could just comment on was there's reference in the policy to not being eligible to those organisations that we have a contract for service with. And I just wanted to assure myself that we were, because I understand we do have a sort of an annual agreement with the Surf Life Saving Club for the provision of life saving services, and I just wanted to make sure that was either a grant or how are we actually managing that to ensure that we are consistent with our own policy, and if we're not, then obviously making that call that we're quite clearly can and deliberately and keen to depart from the policy, which I think is a reasonable outcome.
I'll probably answer that one, I think, Councillor Jennings. The whole idea of the community leases policy was to bring some degree of consistency across the whole range of leases we had when they come for renewal. You're quite right, a number of those leases we still have sort of peppercorn rates, which essentially I think is a bushel of wheat equivalent, which is clearly not, leads to a whole bunch of, should we say, people seeing that there's not a consistent way of doing it. So the reason we did the policy in the first place was to get some consistency across the piece when we do these leases moving forwards. Certainly, the Foxton Beach Surf Club, again, the initial lease was on the basis of the community leases policy. I do believe there may have been some slight divergence in certain areas. I think they were discussed specifically with the ex-CEO, but generally speaking, it follows the same format.
Just to answer your secondary question, which was about whether we had a contract of service. We don't have a contract of service with the Levin Waitanere Surf Life Saving Club. We have a contract of service with New Zealand Surf Life Saving, who then obviously work with surf life saving organisations to provide funding to provide the surf life saving.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's very good. And look, just the final question, Arthur, was one of the things that's obviously key around this project and the lease is around the limited use that the club, or the limited uses, or the limited permitted uses that the club can use the space for. And so obviously that's reflected in the lease. And one of the concerns I have as an elected member is that there's been a desire, among some members in the community, for potentially over time commercial activities to be permitted in that space if we can go down the process of changing the designation for that to occur, because there's obviously some benefits in terms of those overarching community outcomes if the Surf Life Saving Club can generate revenue through, whether it's private function hire, that kind of things, which are things that are not permitted currently under the designation. And so if council at a later point determined that was a course of action we wanted to pursue, changing the designation, how can we ensure that the lease reflects that there might be changes in permitted use, or can you give me some assurance around what the mechanism might look like to, I guess, accommodate that future potential change, if you understand what I'm getting at?
Deal with the designation first. I think one of the particular reasons around the lack of commercial use wasn't so much directly related to the lease. It was more related to the actual the land and the designation of the land. So we've just tended to carry that through to the lease. In terms of whether that changes in the future, then we can always do variations, amendments, and so on and so forth to any number of leases. Whether it's this one or other leases, it just has to be a mutually agreed arrangement, but that one would be contingent, as I say, on the overarching framework and the overarching controls under the designation or under the those other planning aspects.
Sorry, just before you start, Justin, Chief Executive just wants to make a comment.
Sorry, I just, through you, Your Worship, I just want to make one correction. So last year, a change was made where we no longer contract New Zealand Surf Life Saving. We provide a grant to the different clubs. So it's not there's arguably within the intent of it, it contradicts the community lease policy, but that was a change requested by local clubs last year and put in place.
And just confirming that the Foxton Beach Surf Life Saving Club also pays a rental of $200 per year for a lease of 10 plus 10. Is that correct? Yeah. Councillor Tony Hartley.
Kia ora, Sean, Arthur. Thank you for pulling this all together. I've got a few questions actually. And I'll just quickly follow up on Councillor Jennings' comment that there will be submissions in that process that articulate why commercialism of that site wasn't a consideration for many of the iwi hapu of that area. But anyway, I'll go on. At point 13, one thing I noticed when I went through these documents and the council documents, I noticed in there was no note of anything. One, to state it's accretion land. Two, to state that it is coastal marine space, which right now is under treaty claim. And so I just raise these matters because, you're hearing everybody wants to build a house on a sand dune on the foreshore. And so I suppose that leads me to some of my questions, that I'm going to ask officers to help me with. And that's probably seeking some feedback around what is council policy around accretion land. And I don't need the answers right now, I just need them noted because I'd actually like to understand that. How's the land titled that the surf club's being built on? Because I understand it comes under dock reservation. And how are iwi being consulted in regards to this? Because it very clearly articulates in the documents that they must engage iwi at all points. And so I'm just going to raise those first because in 13.13, it could be noted that iwi could be installed in that point. There's nothing in there at all. I'll just go to my screen. So iwi considerations, all it says there is there's been ongoing consultation with local iwi in relation to the new build. Maupoko Roko Hapu have been given written consent. But it doesn't actually talk about what some of those considerations iwi asked. And I think they're important in any type of document like this so that when they pick it up, they know that there was actually some considerations in there. In 15, under environmental considerations, it says there are no environmental considerations. I don't agree. I think we're building a new surf club on accredited land, and I think by leaving that blank like that, we don't have any onus on the lessee or anyone to maintain. So all I'm saying is we don't know the impact of that new site because it's new. We don't know how stormwater is going to affect there. We don't know how sewage is going to affect there. We don't know if, just people being there is going to impact on the dunes and the plantings and all the revival stuff that many are working on right now. And so I just feel like having there are no environmental considerations is not enough. It doesn't afford anything should something not go right. And then as I read further through, it says under other priorities, and I read all those other priorities, but it never includes iwi. So if there's a change to the lease arrangements, if there's a change to the way the land is used, it actually doesn't afford iwi to be engaged. at all. And so I'm just signalling these things because I just feel like there's a little bit missing here, because we get the phone call all the time, but we don't seem to get a phone call if there's a change in a significant document that we're doing. I also noted in the first schedule around the annual rent, and I'm glad to hear that Foxton Beach Surf Club received that, and I would endorse the same here in this regard. But then I look at, in the next schedule, there was a part around structural and partial destruction, and it talked about a process there, but what it doesn't identify is that in the destruction of a building, there's actually an iwi involvement there too, and we don't have it in our documents. So, one of the first things that happens when a building burns down in town, like an RSA or something, the iwi are called to go in there and complete a process. But we don't identify it in these documents. I'm probably asking a lot here, but I'm just signalling iwi are given a 5-minute call before something to go and respond to something, but if they're actually embedded in our documents, then it very clearly articulates that actually these are just normal day-to-day processes that need to be embedded in our organisation. So I'm sorry for being long-winded, but I'm just, I did read my documents really well. So that was that one. Subletting, again, no mention of submitters being notified, and that's iwi hapu and other submitters. In the 7th schedule, Department of Conservation, it doesn't actually explain how that relationship between council and DOC works, and where iwi actually sit in that conversation. So what I'm signalling here is HDC have engaged the conversation with council on land that's under treaty settlement and is coastal accretion land, but at what point in time were iwi consulted? So I'll just leave that there because I don't expect these answers. I'm just rattling off how I feel. And yeah, so I'll leave it there because I think that's enough. But I just feel like that we certainly need to ensure that, because I am thinking about the submitters now. I am thinking about the future of the club, and I am thinking about the future of the coastline. And we have to make sure that we still allow for everyone to participate in all that's going on out there. And I think that's all I'm really alluding to. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. But I like the 30-year lease option. Kia ora.
Chief Executive will make some comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Tamihana. There's some questions in there which we've noted. I just want to acknowledge the feedback, of which there's some really important points in there for us to reflect on. I think just the initial comment I'd make is that the challenge we have at times when we think about a broader project that has a really long journey and some big context, and the purpose of this report, which for some council officers we see it as like a little marker here, which is to find the legal mechanism in which we can lease the property, and so just acknowledging that means that this report doesn't necessarily reflect the history, the journey, the corridor that's gone to date, and what that might mean for the future.
Councillor Tukupa.
Thank you, Mayor Bernie. Whilst Councillor Tamihana said he didn't want an answer today, there is one I want. Hopefully you can provide it. And that is, again, around the accretion land, simply because it was raised by a public member today, and he used words like land confiscation and that we should just provide it perpetuity because, otherwise we're blackmailing the surf club. Anyway, those are his words. But I was part of the council previous term that went through the process of the accretion lands, and just if you could briefly, please, Arthur, just explain that undertaking and how it all went. That's the first question.
Thank you, Barry. The accretion, the whole accretion process is basically done under something called the doctrine of accretion. The doctrine of accretion requires somebody who wants to take over a piece of land to prove that there's been a long and imperceptible change on the coastline adjacent to their land, and then they seek title for that land. In some areas, as I understand, down in Paraparaumu, private individuals have done that. It is clearly a problem in restricting access when that happens, but essentially anybody who borders accreted land can actually put in an application for title on that accreted land. And probably those councillors who have been here a while will probably remember that this whole accretion process started in 2014 or 2015, I think it was. And it took 6 or 7 years to get where we needed to get. And that involved numerous plans to indicate how that coastline has accreted. Now, I'm not someone from, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not from Horowhenua originally, but people certainly tell me that the wreck up there was actually in the water at one point, and obviously with that accretion, it's stretched over 100 metres. So there is a process. It's called the doctrine of accretion, and essentially it's down. It comes down to showing that there has been a slow, imperceptible build-up, and that you are adjacent to that, so can legally claim title. In this particular instance, it wasn't just HDC that abutted that land; it was also DOC, and that's why we finished up with 4 titles: 2 council and 2 DOC. In terms of Councillor Tamahani's request as a relationship with DOC, we obviously went to DOC and asked, the ideal place for this building is not necessarily on our land, it's on your land, and then they have certain elements in there, should we say, how they do things that allow them to give us the go-ahead to do that, and that's actually how we finished up where we are. So we have a letter, a notification from DOC that pretty much tells us, yes, we can build that, maintain it, look after it indefinitely. But it is quite a complex process, and in terms of have we got a policy, Council doesn't necessarily have a policy at this point on accretion, and it's probably something that we do need to work on reasonably handily, and that hopefully would include some of the consultation, some of the discussions, and inclusion of iwi in that process moving forward.
Sorry, Here's a follow-up question.
Thank you for that. It just provides a bit of background or additional information, so we can, majority be at ease with. That's why we've built there. So okay, and now we're going to lease it. So whilst not everyone might agree about that, it is what it is, and any concerns, like you say, perhaps a policy later for consideration. Now, moving on, under the health and safety, page 10 speaks of demolition, and whilst we look at the financial impact, it says, there's nothing to consider, but at the same time you move to page 49 under the 7th schedule, and that the demolition has to be undertaken, I think, within the 2 years that the new build is complete. And do you have an estimated cost? If you don't have the answer now, that's fine, but I ask about demolition because, man, when we got the price for demolishing the paddling pool, and I thought, what the heck, we all did actually. The price to demo a little pool compared to a building like that must be more than what I'd like to pay, but do you understand where I'm coming from? It's just that maybe it's not, because it's within 2 years, it's not going to financially impact us right now, but it will in 2 years. So I would like to know, heads up, what that might be.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Tukabai. We haven't actually got a price for demolition at this moment in time. That said, we are looking at demolishing, I think everybody's quite aware, the old ex-ladies bowling club over at Thompson House at some point in the future. We got a price for about 40 grand, I think was the rough price for that. I would think...
sorry, Mr. Nelson, I might just remind councillors about the contract that we signed with Homestead. So the demolition is 88k and it's included in the contract that we have signed.
Moving on then, page 51, under number 12 about responding to coastal hazard. Is it actually, just read that top sentence, number 12. Do you want me to read it out or are you familiar? About the constructing in a way that ensures the relocation of future if the need arises. Like, really? Is that the case?
Again, through you, Chair. That was one of the original ideas of this build. I got to be quite honest with you, we've not been directly involved in the build. It is something that has been done by another section of council, so probably would be easier if I came back and gave you some more information from that once I've got it off the other officer.
And just the last thing was around their ability to raise funds. This club needs, I believe, the flexibility. Others might raise it as well. And at the moment, it's worded in a way that's quite restrictive. And at the same time, we're wanting them to provide us with information around their sources of income. And that's important for a club to be not fully, I wouldn't expect fully self-sustaining, but I just wondered if you had, might that be something we ease up on in these terms?
I think we'd be more than happy to encourage any organisation who could access external funding as much as we could. One of the reasons in the community leases policy that we talk about sources of income is because obviously what we're looking at is ideally people who are setting clubs up and doing things like this have thought about it and have got a degree of income themselves rather than depending entirely on council. So I don't, we would have no interest in restricting or controlling necessarily what an organisation might want to do to raise income, as long as it was in line with the lease and all the requirements, then we would obviously be encouraging it rather than trying to restrict any access to external funding.
Okay. Councillor Boyle.
Can I move 3.3?
Certainly you can. Yes.
Can you add 3.4 and 3.5?
Yeah. Would you like to move, yes, 3.4 and 3.5 as well? Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jennings. Any debate or discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving now to item 6.2, the Oxford Street plane trees. To seek direction from Council on the currently deferred resource consent application to remove the plane trees on Oxford Street between Queen Street and Devon Street. Welcome, Arthur, again, and Brent. You wish to introduce the topic? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. The London plane trees are a significant feature of the main street we live in. They make a distinctive contribution to our community's identity and commemorate an important event in Living's history. That said, as you've heard this afternoon, the trees have been an ongoing source of frustration for some of the Oxford Street retailers for a long period of time. As detailed in the report, the plane trees have been a topic of discussion at the council table a number of times,
and the decisions made in the past have led us to where we are today. As officers, we're doing all that we're able within the constraints of the district plan to manage the issue. We currently prune the trees to the limit of what's allowed, and we are undertaking street sweeping 3 times a week throughout the year to limit the impacts of the leaf fall. It's clear that the retailers wish for the trees to be removed. However, as officers, we're unable to act on this without going through the correct process. My involvement in this issue has been limited to the past few months, and in that time I've felt the frustrations from retailers firsthand. We're bringing the paper to you today to seek clarification and direction on the way forward for both officers and for retailers. I'll hand over to you for now for any questions.
So just reminding councillors that today is not about debating whether we actually pull the trees down or not. Today is about deciding the process in terms of where we head to in deciding whether those trees come out or not. So it is a process decision. It's not a yes or no decision in terms of what we do. And while I'm doing that, before you ask, can I just move 3.1, 3.2 that the report be received? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you. As a Liverpool Ward Councillor, this is obviously something that does hit the inbox pretty regularly. And so I've got sort of 3 categories of question. And in terms of we'll start with the options, there's some dollar amounts in there for resource consent process and particularly a district plan change process. And I did want to test that decision around the notified consent piece, but particularly I wanted to focus on how we have costed the $200,000 district plan change process, because for me that seems absolutely outrageous, and if I was a ratepayer sitting out there right now, I would be absolutely horrified and be screaming about how council is using my ratepayer dollars. So can you just talk to me, so that's question 1, and then I'm happy to come back and do 2 and 3 if that's all right. So how have we come to that figure around the $200,000?
Just in answer to that, that is, through you, Your Worship, that figure is a figure that I've received from the planners, who over many years process these processes. So it's an estimate, and it's a very broad estimate, but just to get a bit of an indication of what that cost might be, and that is generally outsourcing the work so that there would be no implications for the existing plan changes that the planners are actually looking at now. So it comes from the experience of the strategic planning side.
Second question is, and Mr. Harvey's ready for this one, I think, have we engaged with the Road Controlling Authority of State Highway 1, being NZTA, about any safety concerns or concerns they have around impact and damage to the road surface, and whether they might have some powers available to them that they could exercise, such as those under the Government Roading Powers Act?
Again, through you, Chair. Interestingly enough, speaking to James Wallace, who is the roading manager, his team do most of the footpaths, tarmac areas. He's indicated that probably NZT would not be that interested in those specifics. They might be more interested if it was around the road itself. Clearly, a couple of items were raised, I think by yourself, Councillor Jennings, around the Government Roading Powers Act, and those I have, as I said, checked with the roading manager, who would be more au fait with that. His view is that they would probably not apply, but again, it could well be worth getting it tested via a solicitor to see if they could be applied. Certainly not something we looked at directly. Obviously, the shop owners brought to us the information around the Property Law Act, which we had tested by solicitors, and the solicitor's opinion was that even with that process, it could still be referred back to the RMA process, which is essentially the one you would need to do to deal with those notable trees. So we haven't specifically spoken to them. I have made contact with the roadie manager around that. Having looked at those documents myself, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to say what might or might not apply. One would potentially could apply through NZTA. I think that's the one you referred to in regards to 48D of that, if they were interested in moving that forward. But I think that would be a conversation that we need to have via roading with NZTA. I think the 55 generally too, which is probably more about us as landowners, and that whole process is probably was a similar discussion around the Property Law Act. As the property owner, it would be unlikely, I would think, but again, we can clearly get it tested with a solicitor that we could, enforce ourselves to cut down our trees, if you see what I'm saying. But again, I'm more than happy to test that with a solicitor.
So just to follow on from that, I'm not aware that we have engaged directly with Waka Kotahi regarding the trees, but I'm also not aware of any complaints or issues that they've raised regarding the assets from damage from the roots or trees.
Sorry, you still got questions? I'd like to finish those.
Just one final, which is, I guess, the other concern with the options here is the time delay between now and actually seeing a result where we could actually remove the trees. And so my question is, in terms of our own understanding of the risk of ongoing damage, or I guess our exposure around liability for damage or nuisance claim from those property owners, have we done a risk assessment or obtained legal advice around our liability in this, and right now around where we sit in terms of the kind of things that Mr. Little was discussing in terms of responsibility and liability for damage associated with blocked drains or with roots, infiltrating underneath foundations? Because that's really, I understand the conversation today is about process, but also by agreeing to a particular option here, we're essentially saying, well, that for a period of time, we're presumably willing to allow a certain state to exist where we could be exposed to liability. So that's really why I'm asking this question.
Through you, Your Worship, I think I'll answer that question and just reiterate that at this stage, we don't accept liability, and it wouldn't be appropriate for us to accept liability because all the reports to date have been inconclusive about the impact of the trees on both the stormwater drains and the physical property. But quite clearly, there is a different view from retailers. There's been a series of reports that have been commissioned for quite a long time, and they continue to kind of say additional work must be done. You would have read the most recent one from the arborist around concerns that the roots might be having on the physical integrity of the property. The comment I'd make is that we consider it important enough to bring it to this council table to say we have no tools left in our toolkit on how we might manage this risk unless funding becomes available for us to go through a process to see whether we can get permission to remove the trees. And that might not be removing all of the trees, it might be removing 3 of the trees, to then see whether that actually makes a difference to the alleged interference and nuisance that the retailers are having in their property. I think there's there's been a number of kind of conversations with lawyers, but it's not got us anywhere. We're at a point in time where we need to decide whether we're going to pursue a process to see whether we can get permission to remove some trees.
Councillor Grimsley.
What I would find useful, and I note that we're talking about a process and not making a decision around whether we want to cut down trees or not today. What's 2002, there were 39 submitters, 38 opposed, 38 supported, 1 opposed. Specifically, how many retailers do we have right now that are engaged with us concerned specifically around this issue? And have there been any specific allegations around where council is responsible for damage to said property? And a secondary question would be, have we explored other options to remediate these concerns by the retailers other than just looking at potentially cutting down trees?
Right at this moment in time, there's probably 3 to 5 retailers who've got concerns. Prior to us instigating this more severe pruning regime, there was probably 5 to 7. So that's the sort of order that we're talking about. In terms of have we looked at other options to mitigate this issue, we're extremely limited by the notable tree status. And again, you've probably read the report, but the only way we can take a tree down is if it's dead or if it's causing immediate health and safety danger to people or property. So that gives us a very small area to operate in. As the CEO intimated before, this is never a simple answer to this sort of issue. Yes, you could say that the trees were contributing to what was happening. You could also say clearing the verandas more often might be less problematic. You could also say, the increasing intensity of rain and the structural configuration of internal gutters might be adding to the problem. So it's not quite a simple. It's not a simple cause and effect, is essentially what I'm saying. There is, in many of these situations, a series of indicators or a series of things that happen that lead to a particular outcome. In terms of what the retailers' concerns would say, we have talked to them around a number of options, but I mean, essentially they've had this problem for 30 years. And they've got pretty much to the position where they're saying the only thing we're really interested in is having the trees removed, and the fact that the minimum removal under the resource consent is 120 days is also not particularly appealing to those particular individuals, as you probably guess. So yes, we have made some approaches about various things. We are looking at other ways we might be able to do this, but legitimately, I don't really see another way of doing this other than under the mechanism provided for under the RMA, or the mechanism provided under the RMA. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
I guess my question was more referring to the fact that we heard today in sulfidos related to flooding and flash flooding, which will be continuing climate events. I'm just more interested in specifically, are there some improvements to the stormwater around some of these impacted properties that may actually, from a cost perspective, may remediate the issue or alleviate it, or be better use of ratepayer money than what some of the options we're looking at are?
The sort of stormwater side of it is not my speciality or my technical area, but I've certainly spoken to the Three Waters manager about looking at doing some sort of assessment to see if that is a possibility. And to be honest, resolving this issue, if you take the trees down, it's not necessarily going to resolve the issue. It will probably be a mixture of, doing some work on the trees, removing them perhaps, and perhaps doing some work on the service roads. There's probably going to be several things that will have to be done to actually improve the situation to any significant degree.
Sorry, I'll just jump in to add something on that one. Currently, when we know there's imminent weather event or heavy rain forecast, we are trying to do some ad hoc clearing of the drains ahead of that to try and get ahead of the challenges with the leaks. But it's obviously we can only do what we can do.
Thank you, gentlemen. My question relates to option 4, which is around the resource consent process and ceasing the pruning. And my particular, so page 60 on the report, my specific question is around the quote in the report which says that some retailers have intimated they do not recognise there is any value in the current tree pruning program. And my question is, can you quantify that? How many are we talking about? And what is your view as officers about whether or not that would be a wise move?
As an officer and somebody who's been involved in grounds maintenance and tree maintenance for a considerable period of time, I would think pruning has to continue. Those trees are forest trees. They are small, relatively small at this moment because we're keeping them through annual pruning. The very minimum I could say is if we stop pruning, there would be a 30% increase in leaf litter. And then if we stopped again for another year, they're quite quick growing trees, so you'd probably get another 40 or 50% increase in leaf litter. So in terms of, you're asking me, is it sensible to continue, then my opinion of someone who's involved in that area would be yes, it is something worth pursuing, unless we can get a relatively quick resolution and turn, less than a year's pruning round within that 120 days period. So, personally, as I say, professionally, I would suggest we continue doing that pruning.
All questions?
Can I just have one question to the Chief Executive?
Certainly.
Just a question to the Chief Executive around the decision that's already been made on the paused resource consent to publicly notify. And I suspect I know the answer to this question, but I'll test it. Does this table have any ability to influence or override that public notification requirement? Because that seems to be what is contributing a significant amount to the cost estimates across all of those options.
No. And just for absolute clarity, obviously this is a unique situation where I wear two hats, because I wear a hat as the applicant for the consent, and then I wear a hat as Chief Executive of the regulatory authority that has to process that consent. We have outsourced the consenting process to an independent planner to ensure that there is no conflict or perception of that conflict, and we could challenge the independent planner's decision, but the reality is when you read the district plan and read the intent of the protection of those trees and read the decision of the consent planner to say it should be a publicly notified process, you can see why the planner has got there, because of the policy intent to protect the trees, whether we agree with that or not. That was the intent of the policy of the day.
Mr. Mayor, I move option 2.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Olsen, thank you.
So speaking to it, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of observations I want to make is, first of all, to note the legal opinion that the resource management process is that which we should follow rather than the Property Law Act. So that's where our legal opinion currently sits. So I'm one who therefore supports the RMA process. Secondly, around the issue about whether it should be through a district plan change or through a resource consent, I absolutely do not favour the district plan change process. It's time consuming, resource hungry, it will be costly, and also uppermost in my mind is it will deflect officers from other much more important priorities in terms of the use of their time for very little gain, I believe. The resource consent process, however, on the other hand, publicly notified, will achieve what I think is essential to this process, which is full public engagement. Because if there's going to be a burning issue in the township of Levin, I believe it'll be around these trees, and a publicly notified resource consent process, which is embodied in option 2, along with under officer advice continued pruning to do the best we can to meet the current needs, seems to me the sweet spot and the way forward.
Can I also say that, look, I could have easily have declared a conflict of interest in this matter, but you'll note in the report that the tree outside my shop got taken out in 2002 because it was damaged, and I had no part to play in the fact that that tree was damaged. And in fact, Councillor Grimstone has referenced the submission made in 2002, and you will see my name as being a signatory to that submission in terms of making sure that the trees were looked after and continued to be looked after properly in terms of the removal of some height and some making sure that leaf coverage wasn't as much. Look, I have some distinct sympathy with the retailers who are involved, and I know personally the damage that heavy rain events can cause to our shops and damage the stock inside our place, and in fact have at Christmas time a number of years ago lost some $1,000 worth of stock because of the heavy rain events, which funnily enough had nothing to do with the leaves problem that we are experiencing occasionally. Process has got us to where we are today, and process is the thing that we actually need to follow to make sure that we continue to give justice to the system. And I agree with the Deputy Mayor that this, at the moment, is the best option that will hopefully get some start to a resolution. And as he says, regardless of whether we do or we don't do, this will be a huge topic for this town. And I can remember when the pollarding took off most of the trees a lot of years ago, the interest and the amount of feedback that was given at the time was massive. So don't underestimate how big an issue this is and how emotive it can be. But that is why it's critical that we follow process correctly. So I will be supporting the recommendation, option 2. Councillor Brookstone.
My comment is my view, really, that this issue's been around for 30 years, and though we would like to advance, I still don't see the positive vision that following the process right now, given the rates increase we're looking for and the increased costs, why option 1 may not be a justifiable consideration to better frame up a resourcing consent that is attached to transforming Tautoko, where actually we've got a better vision for our community to understand what transforming Levin looks like and what, if any, these trees might form as part of. Because looking at the arborist's report, all the trees are relatively healthy and pruned. There's no justification for taking them out on the basis of ill health. And yes, there is damaging to stormwater drains and some footpaths and stuff like that, which potentially could all be remediated through a design being put forward through the Transforming Tautoko town centre agenda potentially. So I kind of am in the camp of why spend money now when we don't have to, and we've got ratepayers that are looking at a significant rate rise when it could maybe more advantageous for this council to be able to present a much fuller picture around what it looks like. In saying that, if option 2 is the consensus of the table, well, I will quite happily run with that. I just want to test or voice my view.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll just speak briefly against the motion. For me, this is absolute madness. With a stroke of a pen, we included these as notable trees in the district plan, and now we are faced with these ridiculous dollar amounts to remove trees that we know need to be removed. The trees have got to go. They are damaging community infrastructure. They're damaging, I believe, private property. And so I'm absolutely of the view that they have to go. And the cost is just outrageous to me. And the reason I can't support this motion is that for me, I would have really liked to have seen that conversation with Waka Kotahi. I believe there is a very viable option there. I believe there are safety considerations around that corridor, visibility, lighting, damage to their own road surface through water infiltration associated with the trees. There are a range of issues that could have been discussed and put forward, and I believe that there are tools in the toolbox that could be exhausted or should have been explored to ensure that they could be exhausted before we commit ourselves to, as I say, some of these ridiculous sums of money. And gosh, doesn't it emphasise the ridiculousness that the RMA has become? So anyway, that's all for now. For me, I prefer option 3 in terms of that certainty of changing the district plan, but certainly not at the price tag that is associated with that. So,
Councillor Boyle.
I just want to echo Sam's words around the extreme cost on this. I still look at our district plan and how it says the trees could be removed if they posed an immediate danger to a habitable building, and our definition of a habitable building is a room that you could potentially do something in, use for general amusement purposes. Immediate danger, I mean, to me, they pose an immediate danger. We've seen it. We saw photos of the immediate danger that they pose. Can't we just cut the trees down? Not spend any money?
Councillor Brennan.
Just I'm thinking, apologies I've missed it. Do we have any idea what the cost of removing all the trees would be?
We haven't priced that yet, Councillor Brannigan.
It's going to be substantial.
Well, we paid 50 to prune them. Removal's probably going to be more than that. But you know, this whole process could end up in, you know, us not being able to take them out at some point, which I think is the other thing that needs to be considered. So I think probably assessing that sort of 3 months to 6 months too early. Probably as we get closer, we'll get a better idea for removal.
Okay, so we have 3.3 option 2 on the table. The council continues current pruning of the Oxford Street plane trees and progress the resource consent application for the removal of Oxford Street plane trees, noting there will be an estimated $120,000 required for the consent, and consultants would be in addition to the current operating expenditure of $50,000. And the Deputy Mayor wishes to have his right of reply.
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. Look, I want to respond to some comments both from Councillor Grimstone and also from Councillor Jennings. In terms of Councillor Grimstone's comments about option 1, transforming Taitoko, I think My real concern about that option is about the greater delays that will be caused by that, and have to ask the question, for what benefit? What significance will the 38 trees have in the overall planning around transforming Taitoko versus the delays and so on and uncertainties that will continue to linger? With Councillor Jennings, I do have to push back on statements like the trees have to go, because we really are involved today in a process, and I think we have to respect the fact that while Councillor Jennings clearly has a strong view on that, which I understand, this is going to be an issue where people really want us to say tonight, what is the process by which we will be heard, not these trees have to go. So I just want to reinforce that they do have notable tree stasis at the moment, and comments like that are not helpful in the debate at this point in the process. So need to put that on the table, and with those comments, thank you for the opportunity for a right of reply.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is on the table. All those in favour? Can we have a show of hands just to make sure, please? Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Brent. So we'll now move to the late item, which you would have received separately, which is the purpose of this report is to seek approval of the direction and scope of the draft long-term plan 2021-2041 amendment and annual plan 2023-24. Can I just move 3.1 that this progress report and scope of the draft long-term plan be received? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Horowhenua. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Karen, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kia ora koutou. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to add a couple of extra comments that in presenting this paper, it's part of our approach about increasing the openness and transparency with yourselves and with the community around Council's work and what goes into it. This particular paper is about both seeking your approval of the direction and scope of the draft LTPA and annual plan, and also sharing the findings from that early budget analysis and where we are at, so everyone can see why and how things are being proposed. This paper is essentially a record of last week's workshop. I note there's a further workshop this afternoon, building on last week's and going into further detail. I'd welcome any questions that you have on the paper.
Councillor Jennings.
Just one question. I guess this is a really good paper, so thank you. I think it's really, really important, and it's certainly a change from the last long-term plan that I experienced. But and so it's a really good ongoing record. One thing that I wondered whether we could add to this going forward is obviously we've made some financial decisions today that will have an impact on rates. So we've obviously done landfill remediation, and now we've just signed off some very expensive tree process. So I'm keen to have a running record to see where we've made those commitments, the impact on rates, because obviously as these things come on, some other things are going to have to drop off. So if that could be action as part of a future report, that would be awesome.
Yes, we can add that.
This is no doubt that this, as Councillor Jennings says, a great addition to the whole process in terms of keeping our community informed about the challenges and the prospects ahead of us, and being upfront about those, and making sure that we too have that public record of actually making sure that we are keeping to what we say we are doing, and that the continued no surprises policy is alive and well as well. So, sorry, I just need to go back to the recommendation. 3.2. That Council approves the scope of the Long-Term Plan 2021-2041 amendment as the future of the Levin landfill, key water projects, revenue and financing policy and rates review dependent on future decisions by Council. Levels of service for various activities may also be included in this amendment to help keep the rates income increase to an affordable level. 3.3. That Council acknowledges that uncontrollable cost pressures are going to have a significant impact going into the 2023-2024 financial year and beyond. And 3.4. That Council acknowledges that the early budgets and rate income increases are not palatable and that the budgets will continue to be worked on by Council officers. Officers will present a range of options to the Council workshops that would result in a rate income increase between 5 and 10%. Happy to move. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Allen. Just reminding also, especially new councils, that we are not predetermining what that rate increase is. All we're doing is signalling to our community when we go out to consultation the range that we will no doubt at some stage before December the 21st land on. So this is not your last opportunity to signal what you're comfortable in terms of what that rates increase is. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now move to the reporting parts of the agenda, and we have 7.1 on page 139, Long-Term Plan 2021-2041 Monitoring Report. We'll move receipt of this report. Seconded by Councillor Young. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any questions or clarifications, sought? Deputy Mayor Allen.
Yes, I've got two, Mr. Mayor. I'm referring to topics 1 and 2, and it's just the wording, it's clarification. So on both occasions, they finish with the words waiting deployment. So engagement has occurred, update to the website, but waiting deployment. Could I ask what that means?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, that's waiting for the information to be deployed on the website. That's all it is.
So it literally means just waiting till someone has time to put it on. Oh, perfect. Thank you. That's good news. And the second one is topic 9, the Foxton East Drainage Scheme update, where we refer to Council working with Horizons to deliver the improvement. And they say that the work involves working on alternative options. I wonder if we could have an update on just what that does look like at the moment.
We can arrange to schedule that in for a future meeting, maybe.
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, obviously the funding constraints associated with the project, but also continued feedback from landowners and Hapu have meant that there is some different thinking about the project. Mr. Hiddleston, who represents us on the project working group, he's not here this evening, but Ms. Horowhenua has actually already arranged for the Regional Council to come and brief this council on a number of things, and we've asked for the Foxton East Drainage Scheme to be on that agenda so that we can get updated. Just reminding council that we've made a significant financial contribution towards that project, and so we have a vested interest in making sure that if the outcomes that have been sought don't come from that project, then we would have an expectation that our money is returned.
Any further queries? Being none, we'll move to 7.2, which is Council Resolution and Actions Monitoring Report. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the updated monitoring report covering resolutions and requested actions from previous meetings of Council. Move 2.1, 2.2, seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any items there that councillors wish to seek clarification on? Thank you. We'll now move to 8.1, which is the proceedings of the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board. Just noting too that there's no presence from the Te Awaho Foxton Board, the Community Board today. All members of that board are attending a workshop out of town, which is something that we would have been invited to as well, but we could not attend because we're in a council meeting. So that's why there's no members there. So move that the proceedings of the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board held on the 21st of November 2022 be received, that the council receives the minutes of the Te Awaho Foxton Community Board meeting held on the 21st of November 2022. Seconded by Councillor Brannigan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our formal agenda. We now will move to public excluded, and so I'll move the motion that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, where we will discuss a procurement plan, wastewater stage 2 and water main renewal. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Horowhenua, seconded by Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So we are now in public excluded, so just give us a few minutes to turn